Good morning from California. This is class number 12. That's hard to believe, too. In the Wisdom of the Soul series, ongoing free Zoom class. And thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to continue our discussion of emptiness in the Buddhist sense, non-attachment, similar concept, more widely used in the East and the West, non-attachment, another way of talking about emptiness. And in the West in particular, in the human potential and personal development movement, we usually talk about this as personal responsibility. And a great entry point, which we're going to move deeper into today, is emotional intelligence. The primary concept being that our emotions can be stimulated by others. Obviously, they are. An individual, a group of individuals, a circumstance, a situation, an event can cause you, air quotes, cause you, stimulate you to feel a certain way. But what we all tend to do, because of the way our brain is wired, a structure called the amygdala, kicks in if there's any confusion, much less danger. It's just any confusion, any unawareness, anything unknown or mysterious, any uncertainty. Boy, and don't we have a lot of uncertainty in our lives? That causes us to obsess on the stimulus and suggests, the brain I'm talking about, suggests to us that we need to manage or control what's being done to us. And so we try to manipulate the world. Some people have guns, and others will just threaten or make ultimatums, or there's all kinds of strategies for attempting to manage the world, to control or even prevent the stimulus from occurring. And the idea of changing ourselves is an idea that often comes late in life or not at all. And so the best way, I think, to say that, one of the best ways to say that, is to understand that all of our emotions are a response, not something done to us. Initially, the emotional hit is stimulated, again, by these external events or circumstances. I wouldn't feel this way if this person hadn't talked to me that way. So doesn't my feeling therefore tell me about them and what a rude person, insulting person, evil person they are for daring to hurt my feelings? But the same circumstance, the same stimulus, I'll say it that way, in 10 different people, or 20 or 100 or 1,000 different people, would bring up unique emotional responses in each one of them. So we need to take ownership of that. And that's what I mean by personal responsibility. Non-attachment is, don't hold on to that feeling and carry it around. You've heard of emotional baggage. That's what we do. It's like a grudge, Are you still angry? Yes, I'm so angry at that person. Well, that'll teach them. If you torment yourself with your anger at someone else, boy, that'll put the pressure on, right? You're only hurting yourself. And again, how could you live a whole lifetime and not figure that out? Well, apparently it's pretty easy to do because of our obsession on the external world. And this is also the concept that Buddhists call emptiness. May not be the best word, but it's certainly used widely in all the various traditions. And essentially, emptiness like non-attachment or personal responsibility, is just a wider, more complete understanding that there really is no objective reality. There's nothing objective about anything out there in the world. There are laws of physics, there are principles at work, there are fields of energy that take the appearance of form, appear to be solid. But again, there, as I often say, the most solid object is, in fact, on an atomic level, no more solid than a snowstorm. It's our perception. Colors don't exist in the world, they're in our heads. Sounds, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? That's largely an argument of semantics. Fragrances, that's all perceived in your head. Who's to say that the smell of a rose to you is the same? If I pass the flower to you, it's not likely you perceive that fragrance in exactly the same way, or the way wine may taste as it unfolds, the flavors unfold on your palate. So we call these objects of the mind, and it's extremely liberating to take ownership of this stuff and realize that this external world is actually an internal world. And today what we're going to touch on is how that impacts our identity, because that's the most important aspect of this whole concept, is who we think we are. These meat bodies walking around with these names that our parents gave us, and these careers that we've chosen, and the nationalities that we identify with, or our loyalty to our universities or high schools or whatever. So more on that today, and we'll go a little deeper into emotional intelligence. Let's do an opening meditation if you get comfortable in your chairs. And by that I mean sit up straight, scoot your butt back in the chair, put your feet flat on the floor. You want to sit upright, but not rigid. The idea is to balance yourself. Bring your shoulders back a little. Open up the rib cage. You may want to lift your chin just a little bit and get a sense of being balanced. Your head above your shoulders above your hips. And feel the chair supporting you. And allow the chair to support you. And feel your feet flat on the floor. And close your eyes. And bring your awareness into your body. And I'd like you to welcome in whatever feelings you may be feeling. Welcome in how great you feel, what a wonderful day it is, and how happy you are to be here. Welcome in the fact that you may have some discomfort or area of concern in your body. You may have some actual pain. I'd like you to welcome that too, without condition. If you feel any sadness, loneliness, or despair, or just confusion, welcome that in. Tell yourself silently and internally, I'm a spiritual being in a physical world, and I'm made for this. I can handle this. Unconditional love is unconditional willingness to feel everything and not judge it. Be curious about how you feel physically and emotionally as you just let it be and welcome it in. Be okay with it. Just sit with it. Nothing lasts. If you're feeling poorly, you'll feel better. If you're feeling great, it's likely that'll change too. After so many years in a full lifetime of resisting, consider that maybe, just maybe, resistance is the problem. The resistance amplifies and exacerbates our discomfort, our restlessness, and our discontent. So let go of the resistance. And allow life to have its way with you. Tell yourself, I'm okay. Whatever's going on in my life, maybe it's a problem or a concern, maybe it's really big. Don't resist it, let it come. Let it get all over you. Welcome it in. Refuse to resist. From the top of your head to the soles of your feet, feel the letting go. Relax. Soften like butter on a warm day. Gently, slowly, feel yourself yielding to an awareness of safety. You are a being of love and light. You have the power to redeem and refine that which you acknowledge and accept. Acceptance is not surrender or giving up. It's not the end of things, it's the beginning. To accept, to let it in, is simply to acknowledge reality. Your personal, subjective, capital R, reality. Bring your awareness, if you haven't already, to the bottom of your nose, and for the next minute or two, just another minute or two, watch, observe, witness the ebb and flow of your body breathing itself, all by itself. Silently and internally remind yourself, I am the watcher. not the breather. Let go of the grasping and the clutching and the holding on. And simply observe your body breathing itself, all by itself. And of course, there is no wrong way to breathe, so there's no need to judge whether you're breathing well or whether you should be breathing better. It's absurd on the surface to consider such a thing. And simply identify this is an in-breath, this is an out-breath. My body is inhaling all by itself. My body is exhaling all by itself. And in your practice, during the week between class, begin with identifying and distinguishing the inhalation from the exhalation, and then from a fixed point, without any sense of movement, watch the entire cycle of the in-breath, from the beginning to the peak, the pause, and the exhalation, and the pause, and the inhalation. Notice the period. Notice the amplitude, how strong, how long. But don't judge it, just let it be whatever it is. This is a practice of non-attachment, learning to let it be, and understanding that it's very likely that the mind will drift to some sort of judgment or mental activity. Do not admonish yourself. Whisper silently, of course. It's what the mind does. And gently, effortlessly, bring your awareness back to that still, calm point of watching your body breathe itself until you hear my voice again in about a minute. silently and internally, say to yourself, I am my awareness of the world around me. I am my awareness of my physical body, its health, and its behavior. I am aware of my emotions, the way I feel. I'm aware that I am a thinker, that I have ideas. And I am aware that I am aware. I am aware of being aware. I'm aware that I am awareness. And reorient yourself, preparing to open your eyes in a few moments. Remember the room in which you sit and what you'll see when in just a few moments you open your eyes. Feel the chair supporting you. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Take a nice, slow, deep breath, big breath, inhaling. And as you exhale, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, rested, refreshed, feeling better than before. And sometimes I like to sort of stretch or shake or whatever to sort of wake yourself up fully. Thank you for that. I love group meditation. You can feel, you should be able to feel a difference when you meditate in a group. And let me add, I haven't mentioned this in a while, you can always do a group meditation if you pause long enough to bring into your awareness the likelihood, I would say the certainty, that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other people in this world of 7 billion people who are meditating at the same time as you. They may be a mile away, they may be 4,000 miles away, but there's no space in the realms in which we meditate. And so everything touches everything. You enter a cosmic oneness when you meditate. That's really the whole idea. In a sense, you sometimes it feels like you're withdrawing from the physical world, but you're really embracing that which goes beyond the physical world. And it's like the river entering the ocean, so to speak. So you can always do a group meditation, right? There's always somebody meditating somewhere. And probably a third to a half of the world is asleep at any given time. So they're in some sort of altered state. And then there's also the idea of the overshadowing group of souls, which are in permanent meditation. What does the soul do? It meditates. It contemplates. It imagines. It dreams. It's dreaming us. Your soul is dreaming you, and you are dreaming the world. Just another way. That's not to discount reality, quite the contrary. That doesn't, discount the beauty and the wonder and the awe. Quite the contrary. It means that this world we believe is objective actually is a reflection of our awareness or our consciousness. And again, that's such a liberating idea, that life reflects our awareness. Now, we're not wizards. We're not Christed. We're not full-on Buddhas. Far from it. We're more like the sorcerer's apprentice that, I often think of the Walt Disney version of Sorcerer's Apprentice, where it's in Fantasia, where Mickey Mouse gets the wizard's hat and starts to use magic in a self-centered way and loses control. Remember, all the mops begin to divide up, and now there's 100 mops and then 1,000 mops, and the music swells and the water spills, and all I was going to do was mop the floor, and suddenly there's a flood and an army of mops marching with buckets. And that's you and me. We're just learning how to use our imagination, how to dream the world up in a responsible way, how to stop blaming other people for the situation that we're in, and yet not deny the reality of the agreements that people make, to be afraid or to act in decent ways, to act out their fear through a tolerance of cruelty and injustice, or to participate in the cruelty and the injustice. And this false sense of self is getting out of hand to the point that there is a epidemic of narcissism in the world, this I, me, mine, the self-interest of capitalism, from so many sources. I don't want to nail it down to just one thing. It's incredibly complex, but you are not that I, and I am not that I. Who are we? We're the soul, and this class is the wisdom of the soul. So if I can show you how to gain access to that wisdom, and consider that the soul is not merely an indwelling concept, but something that overshadows us, that, as Teilhard de Chardin said, we are not humans having spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. Let's get it straight. Let's get the pony in front of the cart. And as individual human beings, could we then not access this oversoul and open ourselves to this higher self and the wisdom that it offers us? It's already present as your conscience, but it goes way beyond knowing right from wrong to having the solutions to your problems and the wisdom and understanding, the awareness to calm your emotional nature as well. Let's talk about emotional intelligence. I began this class 3 or 4 months ago by talking about the divine Trinity, not simply in the Christian sense of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, but in the larger sense of Father, Son, Mother, and the understanding that for there to be a father and a son, there must be a mother someplace, but the patriarchal nature of the church doesn't have room for women. So the mother aspect, Mother Earth, Gaia, the physical universe, is represented by Holy Spirit or Holy Ghost, the emanation of the Father. Well, that's true enough, but what is the mother but a reflection of the will of the Father? The overlay of gender is extremely limited as a model for the Godhead. The Father aspect could not be less than all that is, right? So to refer to divinity as Father sets up that whole argument about, well, what if God is a woman, right? And that whole thing is absurd because it's really idolatry to consider the source of all that is as looking like a human being. Heraclitus said, ancient Greek philosopher said, if horses had gods, surely they would look like horses. So, of course, we imagine that divinity is in our image. People reference the Bible and said, we're in the image of God. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the reverse is true, that our narrow, shallow sense of ourselves, which is largely false, clearly, obviously incomplete, is sufficient for us to begin to visualize divinity, the source of all things, as a man on a cloud outside its creation, separated from everything else. And this is the rub. This is the source of, I'm tempted to say, all of our pain and suffering. Why not? Why limit it? The idea that we're separate, that we're alienated, that we're alone, and we spend our whole lives reaching out for connection, to just hold hands, to hug, to talk story, to laugh, to share a meal, to tell a joke, to play, to listen to music together, to dance, work in the garden, watch the sun go down. Doesn't take much. I've watched lots of sunsets. I'd rather watch the sun go down with my wife than alone. Although I know I'm never really alone. I'm watching the sunset with, if nothing else, the birds and the bees, and the flowers are watching the sunset. They're folding up. They're preparing for the chill of the evening. You're never alone. You are never alone, though you feel at times not only alone and alienated and inadequate, by the way, but I guess that is the word. That's the word that's coming to mind. Not good enough. Inadequate somehow. This inbred fear. We can blame parenting, but I think it's more the result of this spiritual anxiety of identifying as separate beings in separate bodies in what appears certainly to be a world of separated forms. Because of my background in radio, I use radio and electromagnetism in my own life as examples. And hopefully we're not so deeply immersed in the age of computers and technology that we've forgotten how radio works, but it's broadcast through the air as electromagnetism. And it has a particular frequency. So in a city like Los Angeles, for example, or any other big city or small town, rural small town, they have their radio stations, and they're all broadcasting a signal. And that all goes out into the ethers, all those radio signals. And if you even have a radio anymore, you could tune the dial. Maybe you have one in your car. You can tune the dial and here's a sports station. And they're talking about sports, and here's one of those hate radio stations that is spewing all this nastiness and cruelty for profit. That's all about money. Those guys don't really believe what they say. And here's a music station, but it's not the kind of music you like, so you keep turning the dial, and here's another station. And you can move the radio. If you're in the car, you can drive across town, and whatever station you're tuned to stays with you. So the radio signal is everywhere, but all of those radio signals are everywhere. Why don't they all get mixed up? because they're on different frequencies, and because a radio is a device that selects its, has, how can I say this, circuits of selectivity that filter out everything except the one frequency that you're tuned to. So when you tune the dial, you're changing the resonant frequency of the circuits in this radio to pick up only this frequency, this vibration, right? KPFK is 90.7 what? Megahertz, million cycles per second. That's a frequency. KLOS is 95.5. That's a different frequency. Why don't they get mixed up, you see? That's a much more accurate way to think of the world as energy vibrating. You can call it spirit if you aspire to be a spiritual person, but spirit or energy, it's all the same thing. So if we go back to this divine Trinity, Father, Son, and Mother, the physical world, is spirit, consciousness, and matter. Mater, madre. Matter is mother. Mother is matter, right? That's what the material world is. Spirit, consciousness, matter. The Son aspect, which in Christianity corresponds to the Christos, to Jesus, or in Buddhism, to the Buddha nature, and which is found in really all religions. There's a Trinity. In Islam, it's the beloved, corresponding to the Father aspect, love, which is the Son, and the lover, who is the physical being. That's their Trinity, the beloved, love, and the lover. And it goes on and on. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva in Hinduism, or Sat Chit Ananda. It just goes on and on and on. But the one I want you to become really familiar with, and the reason I even bring this up again, is spirit, consciousness, matter. Between energy or spirit on one end of the Trinity and the material world as a reflection of that energy or spirit. I mean, this is also Einstein putting an equal sign between energy and mass, right? The Son, the Christos, the Buddha nature, is the consciousness aspect standing in the middle between the spiritual dimensions in the physical world. And that's who we are, is consciousness. We are both spirit and matter. We are energy as divine spirit in form. And that gives birth to consciousness. When we talk about emotional intelligence, and I suggest that emotions are the portal to spiritual growth, it's because the emotion stands similarly between thought and action, between the mental and the physical. That's where the emotion sits. So mental, emotional, and physical, don't you see, is a lower correspondence of the divine Trinity of spirit, consciousness, and matter. A lower correspondence. And so the middle way, this is the path. Buddha said this, talked about the middle way. Buddha's example, there's many, but one is that as he was sitting under the Bodhi tree and having just received enlightenment, a boat drifts by on the river, and there's a student of the lute or the guitar, so to speak, with a teacher And the teacher is explaining to the student that you have to tune the string so that it's not too tight because it'll break, but not too loose because then it'll make no sound at all. And Buddha got it. He said, oh my God, it's the middle way. Being rich is not going to end my suffering. And being a pauper, because he tried that too, that's not going to end my suffering. So how do I end suffering? You see, I have to get off these extremes and these polarities and find a middle way where I'm both rich and impoverished. You see? Where I am both spiritual and material. And both is a concept that we have a problem with. We're very either-or oriented, aren't we? It's either this or that. It's driven me crazy, these false dichotomies and this bifurcation. I talked to a brain scientist on my radio show about this recently. He said, oh, that's the left brain. He said the left brain is the either-or brain. The right brain is the both and brain. And he said the right brain is supposed to be the master and the left brain its emissary, but we've turned it around because we're so materialistic and consumer-oriented. We've lost touch with our nature, and so we've become left brain dominant and sort of lost touch with the creative, imaginative, multidimensional right brain. So we don't see all, we see either or. We see this or that, not this and that. And most of our problems are the result of failing to see the bigger picture. Again, because we think we're separated. So a great place to begin to understand emotional intelligence is to say to yourself, I'm not what I think of myself so much as I am what I care about. By the way, I'm going to take some questions in about 12 minutes here, so I really, really encourage you to consider what questions you could ask, and you can write them in chat, and Mindy will call on you and read what you've written. The point of writing them in chat is to help you compose the thought into a concise question, and then she'll call on you, and you can add to that, because I'd like to hear your voice and see your smiling faces, but I'm really would love it. It'd make me very happy. The more participation we can get, the better I feel about it. It's no big deal. It's very casual, very. If you are uncomfortable with the idea of these being posted on YouTube, and you're bashful, or you forgot to put on a clean shirt or comb your hair, fine, keep your camera off, but you could still speak up and ask a question. Or if you just want to put it in chat, stay muted. Mindy can read it for us. But let's think about questions here. Help me out with the the last half hour of this 90-minute class. I'd very much like to be interactive. You are not what you think of yourself so much as you are what you care about. Let that settle in for a second. How do I know what to do, Michael? I've got this problem. I don't know what to do. I sure wish I knew what to do. What do you think I should do? God, I don't know what to do about it. To do. To do about what? Oh, I don't know the solution. That's why I don't know what to do. You don't know what to do because you don't know what you want. Well, how do I know what I want? By understanding who you are. Well, how do I know who I am? Someone asks you, who are you? What do? You say your name. I am Michael Lee Benner. What is a Michael Lee Benner? I've been on the internet long enough to know there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Michael Benners, in the world. I've heard, I heard from one of them in Germany. We got on quite well and kidded each other about stealing each other's name. I'm Michael Benner. No, I'm Michael Benner, he said with his heavy Austrian accent. I had a guy who lived in Orange County. I think he's a real estate guy, come to one of my classes, and he introduced himself and said, "Hi, I'm Michael Benner." I said, "Well, nice to meet you, Michael. That's my name too." Well, these are just words that my parents gave me. I'm a Michael, I'm a Lee. I don't know where they chose. Michael Lee was my father's name. Benner, my father's name. It's just a name. It's a label. You know, it's like the difference between a Ford and a Chevy. There's a bunch of Fords and a bunch of Chevys. They're both cars. Oh, well, it's a particular model of car. Well, these are labels. So what? Is that really who I am? Oh, how about my career? What do I do for a living? Well, I'm a radio guy. I'm a broadcast journalist. I work as a hypnotherapist. And I like photography, and I'm a licensed ham radio operator. And what else do you want me to say about my careers and my hobbies, my avocations and interests? That's not who I am. These are just things that I do. Well, I'm a Spartan. Always talk to me in the fall when the football season starts, and Michigan State always fields a great football team, and the marching band and the drums and my blood gets all worked up. I watch it happening in my body, and I wonder, how am I so loyal to this school? I interviewed an author maybe 6 months ago. Carolyn Baker wrote a wonderful book about Christian fascism, the rise of the rise of Christo-fascism, I think was the title of her book, about the right-wing neo-Nazis that use Christianity as a cover for their work, and how they've infiltrated into some of the more fundamentalist churches with a very racist and authoritarian agenda, a desire to replace democracy with a theocracy, which is a kind of a totalitarianism. And that's what fascism is. Fascism, by the way, is a movement. It's not a form of government. And turned out we were both at Michigan State at the same time, 66 through 70. And never knew each other, but we were probably at the same anti-war rallies. Well, I'm sure we were both hippies. We were peaceniks, you know, probably smoking weed out of the same pound. Didn't even know it. And we just rejoiced in the fact that we had walked those same sidewalks, those same paths, taken the same shortcuts behind the auditorium, and sat on the banks of the Red Cedar River and went to the football games. And it's such a strong bond if you've been to university, or if you remember high school. Probably have the same feelings about your hometown. Or maybe, I'm an American, USA, number one. Really? Why? Where are the chants? Planet Earth. This is called grasping. It's ignorance, self-grasping ignorance. It's a good term to remember. It's used a lot in philosophy. It's attachment to a false identity that starts with, I am this separate physical body, and I am not you. And I have my own interests, and they do not include you. Unless you're my spouse or a child of mine or my parent or my next door neighbor, but as that radius expands, I have less and less interest in who you are. There are exceptions. The horrors of war in Ukraine gets us all excited, although similar invasion of Iraq didn't seem to upset us nearly as much. Maybe because the people in Ukraine are white, right? We dropped nuclear weapons on Japan. We never nuked Germany. We put Americans of Japanese descent in concentration camps. We never put Americans of German or Italian descent in concentration camps. They're white people. All of these problems, don't you see, stem from the illusion or the delusion that we are these separate, alienated bodies, this I, me, mine. That even if we're not narcissists, causes us to feel alienated and isolated. And the way to get back into harmony and eventually unity is through emotional intelligence as the portal to spiritual awareness. Find that middle way. And that's what I want to move to in the coming weeks. Mental, emotional, physical. Get the order straight. And I'll explain this, and then we'll go to the questions. Hopefully, please have some questions. I can do this for 90 minutes. I can keep going if you force me to, but I really would like to hear from you. I've mentioned this before a few weeks ago. It bears repeating. You'll probably hear it again. It's a very good allegory, I think. If we consider that our thoughts are like the steering wheel of a car, and they determine our direction, our emotions are like the pedals, fear being the brake, and the accelerator being our enthusiasm. And the result, the action that we take from a clear, specific ideation, a thought, and a passion, an oh boy, or an oh no, which case we just sit there with our foot on the brake. But an oh boy then moves the car forward. Take the foot off the brake, step on the accelerator, and you move forward. Well, if our thoughts are the steering wheel and our emotions are the pedal, and the physicalness of things is the car actually moving in one direction or another, then who's driving the car? If we're not our thoughts, we're more than our thoughts. If we're not merely our feelings, if we're more than that, if we're more than a physical body, who's driving the car? Well, it's awareness, it's consciousness. But most of us, our consciousness is dominated by an ego self that is the or sometimes we just think of it as the personality or the persona nature. Persona meaning mask. So the personality is a role that we play. It's another false sense of I am a man, I am an American, I am a graduate of XYZ University, I'm a Republican, I am a progressive, I am whatever. Nonsense, all nonsense. These are just ways of thinking and feeling and behaving. Who's really driving the car? In most cases, it's the ego. And it's filled with fear because its job is to help us survive in a jungle. And it did a good job. We survived 3 million years since we swung down out of the trees. Relatively short period of time. And here we are. Just incredible evolution. Able to put people on the moon, able to fly cameras by Pluto, able to drop robots with helicopters on them on Mars. There's a helicopter on Mars. That's pretty smart. We can do cool stuff, right? And then there's the downside. Don't get me into that. Our willingness to foul our nests. All of this is from the illusion of being separate, which is not true. We are unique vibrations, like the radio station, in a field, a unified, universal field, universe, one, one, verse, spinning around. That's what universe means, one thing spinning around. A single universe. There is no them here. There's no one here that's not us. There's no thing here. Cockroaches, eagles, puppy dogs, and kittens are us. The willow tree and the wind in the tree is us. These are all emanations of one thing. There's only one of us here. And you don't get to this awareness through any effort. You get to it by dropping everything that is not true. Rumi said to find love, you don't do anything. You don't need to do anything other than let go of everything that is not love. To find peace, all you have to do is let go of the turmoil that you're creating for yourself. It's residing. The peace and the love is residing in here. It's not something that we have to attain or reach for or accomplish. Just let everything else fall away. Hence the meditation and study, presenting these ideas, these concepts to you. So the ego's job is actually to ride shotgun. We need to push the ego over into the passenger side. It's supposed to have our back in case there ever is any real danger or even uncertainty. Consciousness, the higher self, is who should be in the driver's seat. That's who's driving the car. So you're much more than your thoughts. You're much more than your feelings. You're much more than the way you behave or your name or your job or your nationality, your ethnicity, your religion. All those things are aspects of who you are, but you're much more than that. You are all that is. Now, you can't just go around saying, I figured it out, I'm God. Oprah said that, and she's still catching heat for it. You can't just say you're God. It's true that divinity is in everything, and everything is in divinity. Everything is in the one, and the one is in everything, and both of those things are true. This is called Panentheism. We'll talk more about it. It's also referred to as immanence and transcendence. Both things are true. Spirit is in us, and we are in spirit. Not only does the drop end up in the ocean, but the ocean is in every drop. There's nothing about the ocean that's not in the drop, except maybe the fishes and the whales, but essentially the drop is the ocean. Even if it's a cloud, it still has an ocean body, a dewdrop, a mountain lake, a river. And it's, many teachers have talked about how terrified the river must be to see itself approaching the ocean. That's us. Terrified of the idea that we're going to lose our sense of self in this oneness. That's just the brain lying to you. That's the ego nature lying to you. It's a holdover from our need to survive in the jungle, to be aware of the danger and the loss of self. But you never were that separate self. Each of us does carry unique information. We have fingerprint evidence and DNA proof of our uniqueness in form. But it's not an either or. It's not either I'm part of all that is, or I'm a separate, unique individual. Both things are true. And that's why the integration, the middle, is so important. And the way we approach that is through emotional intelligence, understanding our emotions. If we are clear in our thoughts, but we don't care about things, you're holding onto the steering wheel pointed in the right direction, but you haven't taken your foot off the brake. You're not going to go anywhere. If, on the other hand, your behavior is reflexive, you did it because I feel like it. Why'd you do that? Because I felt like it. Yeah, but did you think? No. Well, that's stepping on the accelerator before you grab the steering wheel. You'll go, but you may hit a tree or run over a kid. So we have to get the order straight. We've got to get our hands on the wheel, clear, detailed, specific ideation, clear thinking, critical thinking, know what you want before you concern yourself with what to do in order to get it. Begin with the end in mind, is the way Stephen Covey says it. Then you bring in the emotional nature. Now it's, oh boy, here we go, off on an adventure. And that creates the results. But of course, you have to, just like driving a car, oh, you're going to weave around. There's a rock in the road. Let me weave around that. Oh, the road is detour. You got to take a detour. Okay, we'll be okay. We'll get back on the road here. That's the way life is. Be the awareness. I'm sorry, what, Mindy?
We do have 3 questions.
Oh, I lost track of time. It's 10 after. Thank you, Mindy. Let's go with that. I'm ready. Can you read me the first one? Mindy? Are you muted or something? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I am. I got it now.
Okay.
This question is from Chris. I'm so intrigued by personal responsibility versus victimhood and blame game. We see it so much in our culture now, on social media, on cable news. It's your fault. It's their fault. I don't think this falls on party lines. The left wing is just as guilty as the right, and I'm part of the left. How do we even begin to overcome this? Is that it, Chris?
Yeah. Chris, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, I see it with the whole COVID thing. The right wing isn't vaccinated, personal responsibility, body autonomy. I mean, it's just crazy that we aren't taking personal responsibility for our own health. We're blaming other people for what's been going on. And I got to tell you, it bothers the shit out of me. And I say that as I'm vaccinated. I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means, but why aren't we looking at ourselves for personal health and mental health?
As I used to say when I did telephone talk shows, when there was real radio, that's a question on which reasonable people can disagree. You don't hear that much anymore, that there is a middle, that in Buddhism, this is called the Two Truth Doctrine, that there are absolute truths and there are relative truths. So reasonable people can disagree, and the grounds for that is, again, the middle way, where I am willing to acknowledge the merit in your argument. I understand. How about if I'm vaxxed, and I think the anti-vaxxers are crazy? How about if I say to that person in my family or in the workplace or whatever, who I see as a crazy anti-vaxxer, and they won't wear a mask and they're putting everybody at risk and yada, yada. I can see I understand your concern. I can see some merit in your position of not wanting to introduce a hurried vaccination into your body, or maybe any vaccination into your body, Um, people have been burned. They used to put mercury in your teeth and chlorine in your water, and they said, well, a little poison's okay, a little poison's not going to hurt you. Nuclear power plants all vent radiation, and we can see the cancer downwind. For 40 years, we've seen elevated incidents of cancer downwind from nuclear power plants. And we have no idea what to do with the waste. And it goes on and on and on and on. People are beginning to understand that their bodies are part of the larger ecosystem. And so just as the world is becoming polluted, so too our bodies are. So I understand your concern, whatever the issue may be. I think it's also helpful, if we're going to walk the middle way and heal some of these wounds in our relationships, that how do I want to say this? That we just be, well, again, more understanding, more forgiving, more willing to acknowledge that there is relative truth all around us, but there is this overlaying fear versus understanding that we have to be aware of, not simply as a matter of polarities. It's not just that the right wing is filled with fear and the left is not, because each side is scaring the bejesus out of the other side. A lot of right-wingers are not Nazis. They're not all Nazis. A lot of them are. But most Trump voters are not Nazis or fascists. They're just terrified of people that don't look like them or don't think like them, of the rapid change. They're busy watching Andy Griffith reruns because they want that comfort, of a town that's run by all white single men. None of those characters are even married. And they're all white. This is Russia. This is the appeal of Russia. Why does the right love Russia? They're all white. What was Germany about? It was a racist, Nazism is a racist thing. So they're afraid of people of color or immigrants, and their behavior scares the people on the left, which, then we dig in our heels as progressives, those who are in favor of change and evolution, and who support things like gay marriage and a woman's right to choose, or your ability to smoke reefer if you want, or do it in a responsible way, or whatever these issues are that are scaring the right. So I think to look at the fear when somebody frightens you, to consider that they're frightened too. When someone makes you suffer, to consider that they are suffering, brings you to compassion. And that's part of getting to the middle way. And I could do an hour on it. I'll leave it at that. But what a wonderful question. And thank you for that concern and for pursuing the middle way on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Pamela has a question. She asks, so are we wearing a mask when we say we are so-and-so? Pamela?
Yeah. When someone asks, who are we or who are you? And like you say, I'm thinking, I can't say, well, I am awareness, because they probably don't understand.
Right.
Which I sort of know that I am, but how can I explain that to them? Or I am Pamela because I'm so and so. Am I wearing a mask? Are we wearing a mask when we say that we are a nurse, we are a mother, we are this, that?
Yeah, we are all those things, but those are roles also. So to help yourself grow and be more conscious in your responses, you could say, well, my name is Pamela, and it's really nice to meet you. What's your name? Oh, for a living, I'm a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker. What do you do for a living? Oh, you're a student. Oh, that's wonderful. Whatever, you know. Yes, I live in America, but I consider myself a citizen of the world. Whatever, just to be a little more discreet. Instead of I am Pamela, my name's Pamela, and it's really nice to meet you. You know, the Eastern greeting, Namaste, really means I greet the divinity in you. I recognize you as a brother, as a sister, as another face of divinity. And that's a wonderful greeting. Aloha in Hawaii means the same thing. Ha is the breath of divinity. Alo is a reference to that divinity. So aloha is the breath of God. We see this in the Jewish traditions also. Reference to spirit as breath. The word spirit actually in Latin means breath. Salam, same greeting in most of the Middle Eastern countries, or shalom in the Hebrew language is salam for most of the Middle East. Namaste, aloha, salam. That's how I close all my newsletters. Those are three ways of saying I greet you as a spiritual being in form without having to say such an awkward thing. So, you know, in our coming and going, if we learn to do that, if we practice it, whether we verbalize it or not, doesn't really matter so much as what you know and what you're aware of. But it'd be nice to break the pattern. And I mean, does that answer you, or is there another specific area there where you'd like to avoid identifying yourself falsely?
It sort of like answer it, but still I am, like you said, Oprah said, I'm God. Now she's getting heat for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, to go out into public and you're greeting people or you're networking or something like that. I mean, is there another way of saying that? I don't know. I just kind of a little baffled about it.
Because if you say I am awareness or I am love incarnate, you're right. You're just going to invite strange looks, and nobody's going to understand. So,
Yeah.
you know, save it for those who have the ears to hear it. And just, again, if you know it in your own heart and mind, and do the best you can with the language that's available to you. Language is just another form, psychophysical object. These are words, all of which have multiple meanings in a variety of languages and dialects. And in terms of the name, which is the most common thing, instead of, hi, I'm Michael. Hi, my name's Michael. That's easy enough. You know, well, what do? Well, I'm a hypnotherapist and a broadcast journalist. Oh, far out. Where do you live? I live in California. You know, I'm a Californian. No, I'm not a Californian. I live in California. Okay? It's not easy. All we got is the words that we've got. There's maybe come back in 1,000 years, maybe we'll have better language.
We do have one more question, Michael.
Sure.
Paul actually has two questions, and I'm going to throw it back to Paul to preface which of his two questions he would like to have Michael answer, the cats or the professional science of psychedelics, or maybe both?
It doesn't matter to me. I could start with the first one.
Hello, Paul.
Juan, so you go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, no. The question is that, you know, I know you have cats, Michael,
Yes.
and spent a lot of time with them. And I was wondering, you know, have you ever thought deeply about whether cats or any animals are aware of the presence of God? And what is their relationship, if any, to God? And how does that differ from humans' relationship to God?
Yeah, what a wonderful question. Let me tell you a story. By the way, it's wonderful to see you, Paul. I haven't heard from you in a while. Thanks for being here. Doreen and I were living in Valencia at the time. So this is almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago. And I had a cat at the time. We had a cat named Huxley, who we both loved dearly, a feral cat who got tired of living on the street and decided to join our family. And one day, as cats do, indoor cats, we never let our cats outside. He would look for slivers of direct sunshine to lay in, to bask in the sun. And he was over here near the window, laying in that sliver of bright sunlight, as I sat nearby, and for no particular reason, I turned to look at him. I just find it comforting to look at a cat, to watch them sleep, to watch them, you know, groom themselves or whatever. They're just, I think they're very spiritual beings. Not that everything isn't, but cats in particular have an appeal to me. And I've had many dogs. I love dogs too. But Huxley got up and did one of those kitty yoga stretches, salute to the sun kind of stretch that a cat does. And suddenly it was like the top of my head opened. And I saw what I could only describe in my temporary state of expanded awareness and enhanced understanding, the catness of God. And I realized that God needed to be what we call God, or I usually call divinity or the absolute, needs to be or wishes to be all cats as much as anything and everything else. So to say there is spirit in the cat, or the cat is a spiritual being, is true enough, but I saw it as God's need to be cats of all kinds, lions and tigers and pumas and leopards and cheetahs and then all dogs and wolves and elephants and rhinoceros and beetles and mosquitoes. And, you know, suddenly it all came together for me. Divinity expresses itself as everything that exists, including sand on the beach, which used to be coral, a living thing in the bottom of the ocean and the sky, the atmosphere is no less divine. Now, there are scales of awareness. Humans are obviously more aware than cats, or most humans are. There's some humans it may not be. That's largely a matter of choice. And so humans in general are more aware than animals. But do animals have awareness? Yes, there's no question about it. It's scientifically proven. 8 animals have self-awareness, and that's been determined rather arbitrarily, but the standard for that is recognizing yourself in a mirror. And there's only 8 animals that recognize themselves in a mirror. Cats and dogs are not among them, although they will recognize themselves or another animal on a television. One of my cats got this big, beautiful LED TV years ago. And one of our cats jumped up on the mantle and tried to walk into, like Alice through the looking glass, tried to go into the screen to get this animal. And I think it was another cat, and put a big scratch on the TV screen. But they can't recognize themselves in the mirror. The 8 animals that can all have a cortex, a covering that connects all aspects of the brain, except for one, and that's the crow or the magpie. It has self-awareness. It can recognize itself in the mirror. Nobody really knows why. Researchers haven't figured it out. Crows are exceedingly intelligent. They will make and use tools. There are YouTube videos of a crow trying to get meat out of a glass milk bottle, and there's a paper clip nearby, and the crow fashions a hook out of the paper clip to reach into the milk bottle to get the meat out. Chimpanzees, or what's the other word for them? Bonobos. They will use tools. They'll put a stick into an anthill or termites and wait for the little critters to climb on the stick and then eat them off the stick. And they recognize themselves in mirrors. Whales and dolphins, but mostly primates, as you might expect. The gorilla is self-aware. But all animals are aware, Paul, all the way down to single-cell paramecium and amoeba have exhibited awareness. There's a video on YouTube you can find where slime mold, which is a kind of amoeba, it's a single-cell critter. No brain, no nervous system, no neurons, just one cell, a little sac of protoplasm, can solve the shortest path to food problem in a microscopic maze. A single cell can find and remember, arguably understand, that there's a shorter way to get to the food in this microscopic maze. And next time it goes for food, it takes that shorter path, each time improving, finding a shorter way, learning from others. Not to mention the miracles that we see of the murmuring of the starlings, where they all move at the same time, or the way fish will do that, and fireflies flashing in unison, thousands of fireflies flashing in unison. How do they communicate that? Birds migrating. I mean, it just goes on and on. The miracles and the wonders of nature are evidence that we're all part of one field. And I think that's the best way I can, in a few minutes, answer your question or address your question, is that the cat is an emanation of spirit, just like the cockroach and the human being and the starling and everything else that exists, the trees and the wind and the water, is divinity seeking to express itself. Its magnificence, its glory, its beauty, its unfathomable beauty, if we would but linger long enough to really appreciate the beauty and not be in such a hurry to get on with things. And then, because I have another minute or two, did you have a question about psychedelics?
Yeah, that question is, with the ever-growing acceptance of the professional scientific study of psychedelics now, like psilocybin, and more being used for therapeutic and psychological and medicinal purposes, do you think that the future of humanity can be aided by an awareness of psychedelics and the realms and mysteries that they present to us?
Yeah. I don't see any benefit in aspiring to a future understanding where we get up in the morning and put a couple of drops of some psychedelic in our coffee to get through the day. Or the problem, is Timothy Leary and Dr. Alpert Ramdas talked about, is you always crash. So it's a doorway. For me, it was life-changing in college. It took my disgust with my religious upbringing and the abuse that I suffered at the hands of organized religion and turned me into a much more gentle being. Now, I spent a whole lifetime trying to embody that, but the acid just, I saw divinity in everything. Everything was divine. And I saw the walls breathing, and music was pouring out of the speakers in rainbows of color. And this tapestry I had there were horses embroidered around the edge of the tapestry, and the horses were running around on the tapestry, around and around, until I touched it, and then they stopped running. And as soon as I took my hand off, they started to run again. Just showed me that there was so much more that I wasn't able to see. Just like dogs can hear tones that are too high for us to hear. There's a whole universe that we have no aware of because of the limitations of our sense and sensation. But as an entry point, or as a treatment for depression, for example, I see great value in it. But it's like a crutch. A cane or a crutch may get you through physical therapy, but the idea is to toss it aside at some point and stand on your own 2 feet. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, be careful with that stuff. The problem with street drugs, of course, is you have no idea what you're doing. These experiments that Paul's referring to are taking place in laboratories that are synthesizing, major universities and research institutions that are synthesizing their own chemistry. I did an interview you may want to check out from a few weeks ago with a Dr. Stuart Hameroff from University of Arizona in Tucson. And he's the head of a Department of Consciousness Studies at the University of Arizona, Dr. Stuart Hameroff, and we talk about this to some degree. Hey, guys, that's all the time I have for today. I hesitate to end these. If it were up to me, I'd probably do 3-hour classes, but I want to respect your time. I so much appreciate you being here. I hope you'll join us next week and any time that you can. If you have friends that you would like to invite, because the more the merrier, I would suggest they send an email to awmysteryschool@gmail.com. awmysteryschool@gmail.com. Express an interest in getting on the newsletter list, or just go to my website, michaelbenner.com, and click on Zoom class. We're building a whole Zoom page. Right now, it's just an email coupon to fill out. We're building a whole Zoom page. It'll be up soon. michaelbenner.com, or email me, awmysteryschool.com, Ageless Wisdom. This is the Wisdom of the Soul, class number 12. Again, thank you. Peace, love, blessings to each and every one of you, your families and friends. Do your meditations, and Hopefully you'll join us next week. I'd like you to unmute and say goodbye to everybody and have a beautiful week.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Michael.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye,
Bye.
people. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Mindy, thank you.
Oh, it was always nice to chat with you. I'm going to let Mr. Feldy, I guess his name is, have a word with you if he wants to. And yeah, we will